Forget fines. My next guest is calling to put robocallers in jail. Republican Senate Majority Whip John Thune is co-sponsoring the Trace Act in hopes it will soon become law. Senator, welcome to the show.
Hi, Charles. Good afternoon.
I think you found a bipartisan topic everyone can get behind.
Seems like it. I hope so. If not this, what, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think most people across the country are incredibly frustrated, not to mention the vulnerable populations, the elderly who get preyed upon by these scam robocallers. And what we're trying to do is ensure that there are sufficient deterrents in place from some of these violators to get these robocalls, not only the inconvenient ones, but more importantly, the scam ones, put to an end.
Sir, from what I've read, though, the current deterrents, whether they're fines or anything else, just aren't enough, in part because some of these are offshore operators.
Correct.
How would you go after them? How does the Trace Act go after someone who may be in a different country pulling this off?
Well, one thing is, we believe there's got to be a credible threat of criminal prosecution, and that doesn't exist today. There are fines levied in some cases, but if you're outside of the country, that doesn't affect you. And we had somebody come and testify in front of our committee a few months back who basically said that these fines are a cost of doing business. They actually build it into their model. And so there's got to be a stronger deterrent, stronger penalties, increasing the fines. We strengthen some of the legal authorities there that the FCC has, but more importantly, we believe there's going to have to be, in order to really provide a disincentive for some of these bad actors, the threat of criminal prosecution. And so our legislation attempts to get at that issue, and then also allows the telecommunications companies, gives them more tools to authenticate calls, and so that they can start to filter some of these calls when they come in. So there's really three prongs or three parts to this process, but we believe that this is something that ought to move, and certainly there is I think a desire for it to move by the American public.
There's no doubt. And the cost of doing business is sort of like when you live in a big city and you see these UPS trucks with a bunch of parking tickets, right? It just comes with the territory, but it's worth doing it. But how the sophistication is amazing. We just had a conversation in the break. I'm now getting prefixes on calls that look very similar to my phone number, my family's phone numbers, and the technology curve, staying ahead of that. Is the new punishment going to be enough to even be able to catch them?
Well, I think it certainly will make a dent in it, and the spoofing, or where they use an area code that you recognize, is something that they've developed. But obviously, the violators, the bad actors, come up with new technologies to get around some of the the filters that have been put in place already. But we think that there is a real deterrent if you have the threat of criminal prosecution. Today, like I said, a lot of these financial penalties are simply something that they build into their business model, and I think we've got to have more tools in place, not only when it comes to the threat of criminal prosecution, but also tools that the companies, the providers can use to authenticate these calls and make sure that whoever's calling you, if somebody's calling you to tell you that your flight's been canceled or your doctor's appointment's been moved, things like that, obviously, we want to be able to allow to get through. But most of the bad actors, the violators, are these folks who are just preying on people, and I think that's what we're trying to get at, and we think that this legislation will make a very serious attempt at that, and hopefully not going to end them all, probably, but certainly make a dent in it.
We're looking for 100-0 on that vote. I do want to switch gears a little bit, though, here. President Trump tweeting out that the move to go after Obamacare and replace it will be a post-2020 issue for your party. Are you happy with that decision?
I think it's a realistic one. I think what the president concluded is that it's virtually impossible to get a health care overhaul reform bill through the Congress on the president's desk when you have to deal with the Democrat House, whose main priority is to enact a $36 trillion one-size-fits-all government-run health care plan. And so, that's where Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats in the House are coming from. And I think the president recognizes that in order for us to get the kind of health care that will really lower costs and provide people in this country greater access, is going to take a Republican House. And I think he's concluded that the best way to get that is after this next election, to go out and win the House, get him reelected. In the meantime, work incrementally on things that we can do, like prescription drug pricing, and that's an issue that's a big priority for a lot of Republicans here on Capitol Hill.
Senator Johnson, thank you very much. Always a pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks, Charles. You bet.